Hey everyone, this is going to be the first video in a 4-part series where I cover the entire process of decaling a custom clone trooper. Now in this first episode, I'm going to cover the supplies and preparation prior to decaling the figure, and then in future videos I will cover cutting the decals, applying the decals, and sealing the finished figure. So now, one thing you're going to want regardless is a mat like this. They're pretty cheap, usually about $5 or $10, and it just prevents you from damaging the table surface as you cut the decals. Another essential tool is a cutting tool. You can use a hobby knife or a pair of scissors. Personally, I prefer using scissors because you can usually get a more precise cut, and it usually does go a little bit quicker than using a hobby knife. There definitely are some situations where a hobby knife comes in handy though, so I would recommend having one on hand. You're also going to want a pair of tweezers. You use these to pick the decals up out of water and align them on the piece you're applying the decal to. Finally, you're going to need some applicator sponges. These makeup wedges work great. They are used to squeeze all the excess water out from underneath the decal. So once you've applied it, you press down with this sponge and it just helps the decal to conform to the surface. You're also going to need a sealant. Personally, right now, my favorite is this varnish spray, which I believe was like 10 or 15 bucks off Amazon. It works pretty good. Some other good brands that I'd recommend are Rust-Oleum and Krylon. You can get several different finishes from these brands. On hand, I've got 3 different Krylon finishes. So this is a matte finish, crystal clear, and triple thick crystal clear glaze. Of these 3, I think crystal clear is my favorite. It gives a nice shine, but this one is a bit thick. The matte finish also looks pretty good, but it's a bit duller than an official Lego print. So I prefer a more glossy coat like this. As I said before, Rust-Oleum and Krylon are 2 brands I'd recommend. Those are usually pretty cheap, around $5 for a can. I think that those are probably the best if you're just getting started. And as you continue to decal, you might find another brand or product that you personally prefer. Now, moving on, there are a few other items that definitely help the process. I wouldn't necessarily consider them essential, but they can be a big help. For starters, you've got micro set and micro saw. You're going to want to pair these with a pair of small brushes. But now what these do is just help the decals stay on the parts. Use micro set prior to applying the decal, which just helps the initial adhesion. And then after you've applied it and squeezed it with the sponge, you're going to wipe some micro saw on top. And this kind of like breaks down the decal and just helps it to conform to curved surfaces. It's especially useful for helmet decals because the helmets have all those different ridges and dents in them. And you can just use these tiny little brushes to brush it onto the parts. You can, and as I said before, this is not essential. I personally do use it. I think it helps a lot, but you can apply decals without using those. Another helpful tool is this hand drill kit. You can use this to drill holes into a helmet. So a lot of helmets, like the Phase 2 helmet, will not have any holes on the sides. But if you want a character like Rex, which needs a accessory like this arc antenna, you need a hole there. So I believe it's the 1.5 millimeter bit that works best. But you just got to carefully drill the hole into the side of the helmet right there. And it's the perfect size to fit in an accessory. There we go. Perfect fit. A lot of Phase 1 helmets already have the holes. So when you're using a Phase 1 visor, you should be good. I think it's mostly for Phase 2 figures that need an arc antenna. As part of the process, I'll cover this more later, but you are going to need to scrape out the hips of the blank figure that you're decaling. You can do that with just like a hobby knife, but a Citadel mold line remover is another good option. Now, you can also use an electric nail file. I don't have one on hand at the moment, but I do occasionally stock them on my website. Those make the process a lot quicker. That's what I use personally, and I really prefer it. I mean, with a Citadel, it might take you like 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes just to scrape out the hips, but the electric nail file can knock it out in like less than a minute. It's great, especially if you're decaling a lot of figures. If you're just getting started, you can even just use a hobby knife. You have to be really careful because of how sharp it is. But you can get the hips scraped out with just the blade. All right, so now that I've covered all the tools that you need, now we're going to move on to the supplies. So with any figure that you're making, you're going to need a blank white figure. All of the 2020 style designs utilize the figure with white colored hips, and all of the realistic and animated designs utilize a figure with the black colored hips. Now, black hips are actually in short supply at the moment. I don't have any of them listed. I do, however, have some black hip decals available, which just covers all of the white surface on the hip with a black color to make it look like this. You can get them individually for like 50 cents or a pack for like $1, something like that. Pretty cheap. Then you're also going to need a helmet, depending on which style of character you're doing. Now, currently, I only have characters that would utilize one of these 3 helmets. Either a Phase 2 helmet for any of my Phase 2 designs, a Phase 1 helmet for any of the Phase 1 designs, and then the Phase 1 ARC Trooper helmet for a few of the animated Phase 1 ARC Troopers that I have listed. Next up, we're going to move into decals. So, for my Phase 2 designs, I currently stock them in 3 different armor styles. So we have the animated Phase 1, which is based off of the Clone Wars series, which LEGO produced a few characters of a while back. Then LEGO made some realistic designs. These are based off of more of the movies, like episode 2 and 3. Finally, we have a 2020 style of design, which is kind of a mixture of different styles. And LEGO just introduced this design in 2020, so we refer to it as the 2020 style. Next up, you've got Phase 1. The Phase 1 animated body is a little bit different. The legs are almost identical, just slightly changed. And there's a few adjustments to the torso as well. And then, obviously, you have a different visor piece on the Phase 1 animated decals for fitting this helmet. And then you have the realistic Phase 1 designs. Now, these utilize the same torso and leg style, but just a different helmet style, again, to fit this helmet instead of the Phase 2 helmet. Now, not all characters need a cloth set, but the ones pictured do. So for Gray, he actually has this new cloth set that I just finished designing. He's actually not released on the website quite yet. So he has a new unique pauldron. And for these pauldrons, what you have to do is cut them out around the edges and then cut out the little circle in the middle. And that allows you to put it on the figure, and it just adds a nice bit of detail. Some characters, like the Rex, actually have a comma as well as the pauldron. So you got to cut out both of the pieces. The comma goes on the legs, and the pauldron goes on the torso. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you're going to need to carve out the hips on each figure before you apply the decals. This is to prevent the leg decals from scraping off due to friction, because as you can see, as the legs are made, there is no gap right here, which means that if you tried to move the legs with the decal applied, it would cause the decal to scrape off. Now, in order to do this, you need to just pull the legs off. And now, I'd actually recommend putting the hips onto a torso that you don't really care about. You don't want to do it with the torso that you're planning to apply the decals to, because sometimes you'll miss and hit the torso, and that could cause scrapes or scuffs on it. Now, just for the purposes of this video, I am going to use it with the same torso. But so what you just do is press in here and scrape out, and as you can see, little bits of plastic are coming out. Now, as I mentioned, the mold line remover it does take several minutes to finish the process. And I'm not going to show the entire thing on video, but what you're going to do is just carve out a space right there. And the finished product should look something like this. This is an animated phase 2 hard case that I made a while back. But as you can see, there's a gap between the hip piece and the leg piece. So that means that when I move his legs, the decals stay perfectly intact. Next up, I'm going to cover wiping different parts. So while you can get a lot of figures completely blank when they're sent to you, sometimes you are going to end up needing to wipe off a piece. For example, the Lego Phase 1 helmet, you can't find it already blank. Like this one is a knockoff brand. It's very close to the original design, but it is not quite identical. And if you're looking to match it perfectly, you're going to need to wipe off the print from a cheap design like this Gunner print. In order to do this, there are a couple different methods. You can use something like Brasso metal polish along with a Q-tip or a microfiber towel to rub the print off, or you can also use sandpaper. Now you need to use a fine grit sandpaper. I usually recommend scraping the design off with like 600 to 800 grit and then polishing it with something around 2,500 to 3,000. Sandpaper is perfect for torsos. Since they're a flat surface, you can easily just rub them really fast on the sandpaper and it doesn't take very long at all to get the print off. So if you're going to be wiping torsos, I definitely recommend sandpaper. Helmets are a different story. You can get some of the print off with sandpaper, but you also run the risk of damaging some like the ridges on the helmet, which can affect how it looks. And so personally, I prefer Brasso for helmets. Now, what I'll usually do is use a microfiber towel to get the initial print off, and then use a Q-tip to get the tiny little details. This one, you know, mostly you're going to have difficulty getting this little gray print in the corners of the cheeks and maybe some print around the lines at this ridge. For the most part, though, this one you should be able to get a lot of it just with a microfiber towel. Another helmet that you might end up needing to wipe is the ARC Trooper helmet. There aren't a lot of blank ones available. Again, you can get a knockoff version, but it's not going to be a quite perfect replica. So if you're going for perfection, you might want to wipe off one of these to put your figure on. So for wiping, what I just do is, you know, shake up the bottle, squeeze out a small dollop, and then hold the rag firm and just scrape really quickly. I'm not going to do the entire process, but I'm going to wipe off a bit of the print just to show you how it works. So as you can see, I got off a good chunk of the upper portion of this design. If you gave me a couple minutes, I could probably get it almost completely gone. And then again, I'd probably use this Q-tip along with a Brasso to get the edges and the details. All right, so that's going to be about all for this video. Now, a lot of these products here you can find on my website. Of course, all of my decals are available on the website. So if you're looking for a specific character, you can use the search bar. You can also use this drop-down menu. If you go to decals and then under JONAK Toys, there's different legions. And so you can look at like all the 501st characters, all the 2 to 12 characters, so on. And so for each design, I split them up into phase 2 and phase 1. And what you can do is like click on a phase 2, for example, gray. I don't actually have gray listed at the moment, but for the example, we'll use him. And then you have the option to buy either the realistic version of the decal, the animated version of the decal, the 2020 version of the decal, or any one of those versions plus the cloth set. Cloth sets are available separately, but you do get a small discount if you buy it with the decal. And again, so for the phase 1s, currently I only have the animated and realistic versions of the phase 1 Trooper. Lego did just announce the 2020 phase 1 character that's included in the Ultimate Collector Series gunship. So I will base a new 2020 style phase 1 character off of that design pretty soon. For now though, I only have the animated and realistic designs. That means that if you click on most of the Phase 1 listings, you should have the option to choose between animated and realistic. There are a couple designs where I don't have both of those options available at the moment, but in the future I should. And again, not all the characters need the cloth sets, but for a character like the Phase 1 Rex, you're going to have the option to buy a decal only for the animated version, a decal only for the realistic version, or either one combined with the cloth set, and again, you're going to get a small discount as opposed to buying them separately on the site. I also sell the blank figures for $3.50, and you can get a variety of different helmets for $1 each. These are knockoff helmets, so they're not like official Lego, but they are injection molded, and they're really a good quality and a great option if you don't mind it not being perfect. Like, as you can see, it's not a perfectly tight fit, but a lot of them do fit relatively snug. I do also carry a variety of different supplies on my website. I do not have any of these mats. You can find them pretty cheap on something like Amazon or Walmart for like $5 or $10. I think I have a few of the micro set and saw combos in stock for $15. You can also get the brushes. You can get 2 of them for $2. The hobby knife or the scissors are $3. Tweezers are $2. And you can get a pack of 4 applicator sponges for $1. I do not have the Citadel mold line remover. I believe you can find them on eBay for around 20 to 25-ish. And again, I would personally suggest getting an electric nail file, because it's a similar price to the mold line remover, and it is much quicker. I do not sell any sealants on my website, just because, you know, they're pretty heavy and large, and also they're compressed air, so I couldn't send them internationally. I think I could send them domestically, but I just don't bother with it, and you can find them from Amazon or Walmart for pretty cheap. And that's going to do it for this video. As I said before, there are going to be future parts to this series. The next episode is going to be on how to cut the decals on cloth. That video will be releasing tomorrow. If you're watching this in the future, it may already be out. But if you're watching it on the day of release, just know the next episode is coming soon. Thanks for watching.